right? Like I think that's one of the beauties of kind of Web3 and especially in L1 is that like Ethereum sure is like changing a lot, but at a certain point we can say, okay, it's like Bitcoin, like this is just frozen in time now, right? Like we figured it out. This is what this product does, or this is what this protocol does. Like HTTPS does not change, right? It's like maybe there's like a standard update, incremental stuff, just like keeping up to date, but it's not like shifting from proof of work to proof of stake, right? I think Avalanche is making really good progress as well. Like how can we get the subnet ecosystem or Avalanche ecosystem to feel like HTTPS, where it's just there, valid, and then we're kind of building on top of it.
Welcome everyone to Chorus One Podcast Season 2. This season we have a bunch of new hosts like myself and Erwin. So I'll start by giving a small intro about myself. I'm Núñez. I joined the research team almost 2 years ago now. Nowadays I spend most of my time in the ventures team, and my background is on civil and environmental engineering before joining the blockchain world. I'll give the word to Erwin now.
Cool. Great to be here. Really excited about this. So I'm also like a little bit over 2 years at Chorus, and I'm an engineering lead here, responsible for the team that works with Avalanche and Ethereum, Celo, among a few other networks. And we do also I like to work with Luis on due diligence for our ventures team, which brings us to the subject matter of this podcast now.
Yeah, I think today we have two of the biggest, well, at least with you, Erwin, the biggest Avalanche pool I know, and myself in the company as well. And today we have the great Stephen Gates. He's the founder of GoGoPool, which is a staking protocol built for node operators and developers to launch their Avalanche subnets while lowering the barriers of entry. Hey, Stephen, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. This is great. I'm honored to be on the season 2 reboot, being the guinea pig. Great to be in a room with you two again. Should be fun.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe we can start by a small intro about yourself and your story before starting GoGoPool, and how did GoGoPool happen?
Yeah, so went to school for applied mathematics. Kind of the biggest decision point was, do I drop out and start doing startups, or do I graduate and then start doing startups? Kind of cut it right down the middle, graduated a little bit early, and then just immediately got into kind of the first venture, and then that kind of progressed. And now I would say this is the third non-trivial kind of mission that I've undertaken. There's a whole big anime montage of graveyards too in between each of those. But we actually got into GoGoPool very much at the same time we got into crypto, and we got into Web3 like very much from the infrastructure side, like way less. I think people don't realize that, but like we're all infra people for sure at GoGoPool. So we got into blockchain because for a previous startup, we were kind of in the middle of fundraise, and we were looking to add on a Web3 component to it. And this Web3 side was going to be like a decentralized Patreon sort of thing, or like a creator chain, where creators can have their own chains, especially the big ones. And then there's all sorts of cool, fun little tricks you can deploy to kind of like create new business models for creators. And we thought blockchain was going to be essential for that. And then when we actually went off to evaluate, all right, what infrastructure do we actually build on now? Like, how do we actually bring this vision to life? At that point, L2s were super new, so that wasn't really an option. There was Polkadot, there was Cosmos, and there was Subnets, or Avalanche Subnets. And we were like in the middle of fundraise, so we knew that we needed to start small and then grow global, basically. Like scale as we find product market fit. Once we have PMF, we knew that we needed this thing to like really scale. And what we kind of noticed is looking at every other solution, it's really built for maybe hundreds of users a month, maybe 1,000 users a month, of like actual true users. And we needed something that could scale much more broadly. So that's what took us down kind of the subnet rabbit hole. And then kind of the deeper we went, the more it checked off all the boxes of like, oh, sweet. Okay, this can actually work. We're gonna start off pretty small, and then run it really large. There's lots of economies of scale there. We can use a token to incent new validator nodes to join the network. There's not a cap on how many validators can join the network. The consensus algorithm will maintain that it's going to be super, super fast, or like super fast time to finality. So that's how it got, and then that kind of bubbled up in our way to launching GoGoPool, where there was kind of a moment where we realized, wait, we're actually spending way more time thinking about this blockchain problem and we're way more passionate about it than we are like this original idea that we're kind of like pursuing. And that's kind of the signal we got. Also got a lot of signals from potential customers in terms of like, yeah, this is a big problem. Like if you can figure out a way to make kind of, really blockchain, if you can make blockchains easy to experiment with and then easy to start and then grow and scale and manage, like that seems to be a huge burning need for a couple segments. And now fast forward 1.5 years, you know, we've definitely learned a lot. But GoGoPool came around from trying to solve one core financial barrier for subnets, where the requirement for a subnet is that, which is just a private blockchain, or it's an infrastructure for private blockchains. The requirement is that every validator node of your subnet must also be a validator of the primary network. So that's 2,000 AVAX per node, 10,000 AVAX for 5 nodes, which is really a non-starter for experimentation. So that's where GoGoPool came about, is okay, how can we both, one, drop that cost down? We started with half, but it'll go down much further. And then two, create a pool of very active validator nodes that are very excited and hungry to help out these app chains who are experimenting with very novel blockchain ideas to come in and basically put their compute in exchange for tokens, to put their compute towards these kind of new startups looking for PMF. Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I think we can kind of trace back a little bit, and then because our listeners are from all different types of ecosystems, so it would be good to kind of look back at, again, the idea of Avalanche and Subnet. So Avalanche, about the consensus, I'm sure that there's a lot of podcasts that talk about it. It's really something that has been hammered over and over. But like, yeah, this thing that you have like unlimited validators because of the communication overhead being much better than in other types of consensus. We can skip that, I guess, but like more about subnets, because this has been tracking, let's say, being more in the radar just more recent, like last year or something like that. So what is a subnet? Like, can you kind of elaborate for us a bit?
Yeah, no, also just to add on that question, sorry, Stephen, would be great, since you mentioned exploring Polkadot and Cosmos and even NL2. Why did you decide for a subnet, after explaining, of course, what it is?
Yeah, so a subnet is just this kind of primitive technology. It's a very, very low level primitive. It's kind of funny that that's also has become kind of the marketing term for kind of like Avalanche subnets or these private blockchains. But a subnet is literally just a group of validator nodes who have agreed to together come to consensus on a set of blockchains. Like, that's it. And then the reason why this grouping matters is because, okay, you have the Avalanche and there's the P chain or the primary network. There's already 1,300 validator nodes there. So any of these validator nodes can get together, like join a subnet, make a subnet, whatever. And then all that's really saying is, okay, now there's a bunch of VMs or blockchains that will be working together, coming to consensus on, or doing some work. There's some pretty cool stuff happening, but let's just say doing some sort of work to make these blockchains functional. And then it's got all sorts of, the Avalanche team has done an awesome job kind of with this idea, or this kind of grouping, comes a lot of the stuff out of the box if you're building your own blockchain. For example, they have a lot of VM templates now. You can customize the EVM so that you can basically take an EVM off the shelf, and now it just works with Avalanche consensus and this whole kind of subnet idea. Because there's groupings together, now you know who's a part of every single subnet. So that enables sending messages back and forth without needing some sort of like, I mean, I loved layer 0, but like without depending on some third party, there's no like counterparty risk now to sending messages or doing your own native bridging between subnets. So there's like, you can tweak it endlessly. So it's very, very developer friendly. And then, but that's basically what a subnet is. Just a bunch of validator nodes come together to agree to validate for a blockchain, and they play by that blockchain's rules. So that's why, like with GoGoPool, like we're talking to a lot of subnets who are kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, what rules do we need to set in place to make this, one, appealing to validator nodes, two, keeps us pretty nimble, and three, accelerates us towards finding product market fit. And so then with that segue, going to Luis's question, like, why do we end up on subnets versus Polkadot Cosmos? It really came down to this idea that we knew if, like, we really weren't trying to build something for the existing crypto crowd. The existing crypto crowd has got like 50,000 people in it, or at least the non-APAC side, right? And it's like, okay, every single DeFi protocol that launches, they're going after that same 50,000 chunk. Like the reason why there even was a bull run is because, there's some macro stuff happening, whatever, but basically there's a bunch of new people that came in. So now the pool of liquidity went from like 50,000 people to, let's say, like 75,000 people. Mm-hmm. That's still mind-bogglingly like small numbers. You know what I mean? For us, we're trying to target this brand new segment of, all right, there are all these creators that are on Twitch and they're streaming every single day, right? Like they stream for 12 hours a day, every single day. And they have audiences between 0 and 100,000 people watching them every single day. So now you can imagine every single time someone clicks a like or posts a link, or we're creating our own little loyalty point system that kind of like tracks what's happening in the chat and on stream and all the interactions. Like that is, even that alone is probably like bigger than all DeFi protocols put together in terms of native user activity, right? Mm-hmm. It's like probably competes now, if you add in like the bots, probably competes with that kind of traffic. But it's just a totally new world. And I think that's kind of something that crypto Twitter is great, but it should be called like crypto native Twitter at this point. Mm-hmm. I think there's so much more space and room just outside of this like 1 billion, or I guess what is Bitcoin's like at 400 billion right now, right? So if we look at like outside of that, the total TAM of crypto, mm-hmm. Like there's so much more than just this like less than about $1 trillion or 800 billion, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And just following up on that, did you expect the barriers of entry of Avalanche Subnets especially to be higher than other ecosystems? I should explain that in order to spin up your own subnet, you need to stake also your AVAX in the mainnet, and that nowadays is pretty costly. But yeah, did you expect this problem in Avalanche, possibly because it was a newer ecosystem than the others?
So that comes around from, they have this idea that if every validator of a subnet also validates the primary network, then now, and because of that 2,000 AVAX or at minimum 2,000 AVAX stake, that allows for new messaging primitives and kind of like new security assumptions that we can take into place. So they took that as a design choice of, we'll have this higher kind of like cost, and then that now lets everyone kind of opt into the system, and now we can make these security assumptions. Mm-hmm. I guess I didn't expect it. And in fact, for me, coming from a Web2 perspective, I was kind of like this is kind of bullshit. Like, why do I need to, buy this coin called AVAX just so that I can like, I guess, lock it up and run a computer? So then I can finally use that computer for my own thing, so that I can like try to figure out what my own coin will be and what it will do. It's like, to even get started with experimenting with all this stuff in a very non-trivial way, you have to like set up. So that's definitely pretty annoying, which is exactly why kind of GoGoPool came, which we reduced that stake by half, and then it'll come down even further. And we're definitely exploring kind of new models that doesn't need like new developers that come in. They can just launch a subnet, experiment with stuff without even having to like put up any tokens, right? Not even, they don't really need to depend on our token as well, right? It's just the tech just works, right? Yeah. I think that's where the future has to go. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, like I said, like, because that's one another way of seeing it, right? Like it can be seen also as a feature for already node operators, that as this thing is going to grow and there will be more and more usage, anyone that's, you can run a validator at home. You can really run a validator at home. So you can look for extra yields from other subnets, right? So yeah, it is it is from the perspective from the developer that is thinking, hey, I want to launch my protocol. Why do I need to kind of come with like extra burden of 2,000 AVAX? Well, you can try to do it yourself, but you can also like already going towards the direction of using this pool of validators that already exists, right? And I think like that's where GoGoPool as a matchmaking, that's how I understand. Perhaps that's a good point. Like, so perhaps in a little bit more detail, what is the vision of GoGoPool and how do you see this matchmaking and working? What do we do there?
Yeah, and real quick for hitting on vision, I think that's what GoGoPool is morphing into as we speak. We're now kind of 40, 120 days. We're sort of like 4 months after launch, somewhere around there. And what's kind of morphing into is, yes, new subnets are like coming on and they're like buying their own validator nodes, but now they're also realizing, wait, there's maybe 50 nodes right now, or 55 or 60. There's somewhere around there, between 50 and 60 nodes right now in the protocol with real live breathing humans behind these who are running their own pieces of hardware. And these people are crypto OGs, they're AVAX whales. They're people who have been around since the beginning and really care about the blockchain ethos. And they're just kind of keeping their computer warm right now. Like they're earning yield in the safest way possible, especially in this market of this combo of GGP tokens and AVAX staking rewards. So now for them, it's cost effective just to like keep their validator node running and just keep it warm, right? Because the ROI is there. But then when a new subnet comes along, like I pretty aggressively make introductions to kind of our community members and like figure out like, okay, like it turns out there's a lot more that a subnet needs than just liquidity. Like they need a lot more than just that 2000 AVAX. They really are, they're truly startups looking for product market fit, or at least the ones that we talk to. But I think even at the financial institution level, it's relatively the same. So that's kind of what it's turning into, right? Which is pretty fun. It's definitely where we want to be. Where I think this is going to go, we're definitely working on a lot of primitives for subnets. The first one should be coming out, hopefully by the end of September. But we're working on a lot of primitives for subnets that just removes, like systematically, we made a list of every single barrier that a subnet team has to launch, and we're just systematically taking care of every single thing that we can do on our side. And then Ava Labs, I know that they have their own list, and they're looking at a very infrastructure level of like, okay, here are the root, like at the protocol level is probably the better way to say it. Here are the protocol things, or protocol barriers of entry. So I think we've got a pretty good mix of both, right? We're working really hard on the commercialization aspect of a subnet and helping these subnets kind of navigate and create that subnet playbook. And then Ava is working really, really hard on the protocol side of stuff to make sure that like this, like we can get to an end game, right? Like I think that's one of the beauties of kind of Web3 and especially in L1 is that like Ethereum sure is like changing a lot, but at a certain point we can say, okay, it's like Bitcoin, like this is just frozen in time now, right? Like we figured it out. This is what this product does, or this is what this protocol does. Like HTTPS does not change, right? It's like maybe there's like a standard update, incremental stuff, just like keeping up to date, but it's not like shifting from proof of work to proof of stake, right? I think Ava Labs is making really good progress as well. Like how can we get the subnet ecosystem or Avalanche ecosystem to feel like HTTPS, where it's just there, it's solid, and then we're kind of building on top of it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So like if then let's dive a little bit deeper like on the GoGoPool protocol itself as it is right now, because like then you can go and explore a little bit what you're saying, like, hey, the new stuff that's coming up, right? So if you are like how do I go about it? I have let's say for example I'm a node operator, right? Like I run my thing at home, and I want to kind of emphasize that again. You can really run Avalanche at home. Like requirements are in terms of hardware are low and work. Just I do it myself. It works. So I am like someone like this, like crypto native, like been here from the beginning, and I'm interested in getting kind of in touch with subnets, right? Like to run these and get extra yield, for example. But also like just want to randomly pick stuff that I'm interested in. So I go like, okay, GoGoPool seems like to be this market. How does it work? Like, how do I go to your website and what do I do?
Yeah, you go to the website. There's a nice little welcome page. I'll take you like steps 1, step 2, step 3, and that'll kind of take care of everything for you. app.gogopool.com. But basically, you come to us with node ID. So you just make sure your hardware set up and follow the AVAX docs to get a node ID. Then you come to us with 1,000 AVAX, and then at least 100 AVAX worth of GGP tokens. So basically, just swap 100 AVAX at least on Trader Joe. Swap that for GGP tokens. Now you have kind of think about it. Node ID, 1,000 AVAX, at least 100 AVAX worth of GGP tokens. Then you go to the website. You basically just click. You sign like 4 transactions, I believe. And then this Minipool is what we call it. Minipool is now set up into a queue. In the queue, it just waits to get matched with liquid staking funds, which is the other side of the market. kind of the domain side for hardware, so to speak. So once you supply your hardware, it goes into this pool, goes into the queue. You get matched with liquid staking funds. Once you're matched with the other 1,000 funds, then it just gets launched automatically. And then the dashboard will show you kind of where you are at in the queue, kind of what the next reward cycle is, how do GGP rewards work, all that type of stuff. It gives a nice little tutorial.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then so like this is like now, right now, then I'm just in a list, still validating the mainnet, right? Like there's no yet subnets at this stage. So like it's like I'm running the mainnet, and now I'm essentially part of a curated list, correct? And like you can
Yep.
that is there like by GoGoPool. So and then as I understand from the other side, you also have the liquid staking derivative, GG AVAX, at least to start with. Which is like exactly what you said, like the other people, and that by this I mean people that are not interested in running nodes, but would like to get the yield of staking without kind of having locking periods and stuff like that, right? The promise of liquid staking derivatives. So they come and they put AVAX and they get GG AVAX. I don't understand. This is the liquid staking version of it, and because of this thing is in a pool, it will. This is the AVAX that will be matched with the node operators, and since they also get rewards, the GG AVAX accrue rewards, right?
Exactly.
That's how I understand. Okay, cool. So now I think like this is more or less, correct me if I'm wrong, where we are at now, right now with GoGoPool. So subnets now, how do you see this happening? Like, because now you have this list. How do you see we going to be launching subnets as a node operators?
Yeah. So if now is this perspective of a node operator, of someone in the community, maybe like a crypto maxi type of person, or is it like a node operator who is also running a subnet? Like they went through this process so that they can like run their own node. So what we're kind of seeing right now from all the subnets we're talking to is that they really need to be supported from the path to becoming permissionless. So it's like you start off with 8 node operators. They can usually, the playbook is sort of there right now, so they can figure out how to get 8 node operators, launch permission subnet. Now they have to get to, typically they want a quick pit stop around like 20 to 40 node operators to kind of, and we're both of our groups are working with one subnet who I'm having in mind as I'm saying all this, right? But we're seeing that pattern play out with Playbook across like everybody else. So they want a quick pit stop around like 20 to 40. That's mainly to increase the redundancy of the subnet and test out, like if we do a token, what would it even look like? Like what's the economics around this look like? What's the price point? What should I ask for in terms of like stake?
That's a good point. Yeah, just a really cool interjection there. Like because a lot of these subnets can be also proof of authority, what they are like permissioned, and then become elastic. That's what you mean, right? Like that they can become permissionless. So a lot of them they don't start like this because they might be interested in like you said, pay out validators to run professionally but they eventually want to decentralize, right? Carry on, please.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's a good point. Everyone starts off as proof of authority. That's like, Pillbook is fairly robust for that. Then they want to go become permissionless. The question is how do you do that? There's this path to permissionless. And that's where we see GoGoPool really helping like this quarter and next quarter. So in the very kind of like short term, it's helping people get to 20, 40 nodes, test out a couple of different concepts for their subnet that's already live at this point, and figure out how to incentivize the right way and get the right kind of initial node operators. Basically, long story short is as a node operator is launching a Minipool, you're going to get access to the best deal flow for subnets, right? Like you will be the earliest people inside of subnets. And we're creating kind of we're focused on 2, maybe 3 mechanical ways so that it just happens in the background. Like it doesn't have to be Steven brokering deals and like making intros. But that is what is happening right now. But now we're working on creating a more decentralized, permissionless way for people who are now running mini pools. Now they're able to kind of like get access to these subnets and just join and help them validate and also give them tight feedback loops, coordinate upgrades. And I think for a lot of mini pool operators too that like gone through this, we're learning that a lot of them don't want to become professional node operators, right? So it's like once they join the first subnet, they're like, oh man, this is a lot of work. I can now imagine if I joined like 2 or 3 more subnets, like this is a full-time job. And it's like, yeah. So now we're creating a bunch of tools as well to make their jobs as simple as possible. So you can get as much juice as possible for kind of like the average person.
Cool. Yeah. Clear. Okay.
You
Yeah, go
also
ahead.
to maybe clarify, you mentioned before Minipools. Maybe if you could expand a bit on it for everyone to understand how it works.
Yeah, so a mini pool is just an Avalanche validator node that's made up of GGP tokens, 1,000 AVAX of a node operator, and then the liquid staking side. So then we kind of pull these ones together, and that's why we call it a mini pool. And how it works is it's non-custodial, it's permissionless, and we can launch one. You bring out your own hardware, or the node operator is responsible for their own hardware. So it's definitely not a trivial responsibility, right? Like you're literally a part of the Avalanche network now, and you do have to do the work of maintaining it, or you can kick that out, pay $40 a month to all nodes, or like $150 a month to whatever node operators, groups that there are. So there are professional services to help, but it's definitely, I want to stress, it's definitely a non-trivial responsibility. Like you're now running the blockchain, and that comes with the rewards, but also kind of, all the responsibility that comes with, coordinating upgrades. Like, okay, the chain went down because there's a vulnerability. Now everyone has to flash upgrade really quickly. It's like that stuff happens. And same thing, even double down for these subnets, is that's why we're stressing so much on the quality of node operators for these subnets when they come on. Because if you think about it as a subnet, I've got 8 nodes. Maybe at this point I got 15. I need to quickly upgrade kind of something, or maybe there's a power outage in AWS US East 1. So then now like 5 nodes go down. Well, your subnet just went from 8 nodes to 3 nodes that are active and maintain the subnet. Like that's pretty scary, especially as a subnet project where typically the subnet is kind of mission critical. This blockchain component is kind of like pretty mission critical. That's pretty spooky. So that's why everyone wants to kind of add in like, all right, let's have 20, 40, 60 nodes as a part of my subnet. That way I can start, there's redundancy.
Yeah, this is, I think, like something that the Avalanche community or ecosystem like can learn a lot from Cosmos, like how they launch Cosmos chain, like with the amount of validators that they want. It's really a lot of preparation, a lot of testnet, a lot of and talking to like professional validators. I mean, I personally, I think like there should be room for both professional and non-professional ones. And this is something that like the subnets allow. So I'm actually pretty happy with this. But like there was a few questions that I had like there about what you just said. One is, and again, like we can edit it out if you don't want to talk about it. But like it's like, let's say, because the question is, you have in Avalanche this idea that there are no slashing, right? I can go, and it's really nice because for the people that want to run from home, you can just go there. The requirements are not so onerous, and on top of that, like if you don't meet it by some bad luck or something, you don't lose your main collateral, right? Like you don't lose your main. Like it's essentially, okay, I lost my rewards for this 3 months that I locked, and I'm gonna try again next time. So with a protocol like GoGoPool, now we have a more complex situation where like there is the liquid staking derivative, the AVAX, that is essentially like socializing this risk, right? So what would happen if in GoGoPool, me as a validator, I do a bad job? I'm sure that like there's like things that you can do in protocol to say, hey, we're not going to go with this guy anymore, right? Like, or something like that.
Right.
But even then, it's just a node ID. I can just like generate a new node ID and I'm a new person. So like, how do you see this evolving? Like that's a kind of a question.
So 2 things. One for kind of like how it works right now, and then another kind of future forward-looking statement. In terms of how it works right now, is we do implement slashing, and hopefully that becomes clear of like why. The AVAX principle is still safe, but we do slash the GGP tokens that people or that the node operators put up, so that if you have bad uptime, then your GGP tokens are basically slashed, and that's in order to make the liquid staking side, to make liquid staking yield whole again, to make it a really, really safe experience for liquid stakers. And then now that that's the stick, then the carrot is, but if you do a good job, then you get GGP rewards as well. So there's always the carrot and the stick. And then where this is going and why we kind of like chose this design approach is we actually think the optionality is going to be important for subnets. Subnets will want slashing, and subnets will be important enough, or maybe they'll gamify it in some way, but they will want to be able to slash the core like AVAX principle. And right now, through kind of the normal primitives that exist, like that just nobody can experiment with that. But I think we believe pretty deeply in experimentation. Like just people come up with awesome stuff, and the market will kind of dictate. You know, we'll look forward or look back like a year from now, and then the market will dictate: does slashing matter? Does it not matter? But so GoGoPool does provide slashing as a kind of like open primitive for subnets. The important thing to note though is that even if your subnet does implement slashing and they want to slash both GGP and AVAX, that doesn't mean like you as a mini pool operator, you would have to join that subnet to be kind of like beholden to those rules. So it's not like you're affected by that decision at all whatsoever. For the protocol, like today, all it means is your GGP tokens do get slashed if you're a bad actor. And that's to make liquid stakers whole again. And then just subnets is definitely an interesting thing for them of like, oh, like if I needed to do some sort of slashing, whatever, then like I can bring in the validator nodes who are okay with that rule and that risk. And they'll have their own, you know, there's always cool, fun gamification ideas, but they'll have their own ways of what's the carrot and stick analogy for that situation.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, makes total sense. The other question that I had is like the fact that to launch the mini pool, you need to have the AVAX from the side of the liquid staking derivative, right? And there is kind of a liquidity potential problem here. Like if this thing dries out, like no more people put it in, we cannot, the protocol grinds to a halt. So are you thinking about mechanisms to address this? Like how would you go about it? Like that would be I'm interested in knowing.
Yeah, it's a very hot topic right now internally. We definitely like, I think the protocol that wins, especially for us, and especially in a bear market, I think the rules are different in a bull market. In a bull market, the answer here would have been, no, we don't care. We're just gonna pump out 1% of our total supply every single month for LPs, and like liquidity won't go away, right? And it's like, okay, fair enough, that works, or that did work. But now in a bear market, it's very much a PvP kind of game right now. So we're looking for much more sustainable ways to create liquidity. I can throw out a couple ideas. I don't want anyone to get mad at me for thinking like, oh, you guys can do this idea. Like, no, this is definitely, we're in the kind of like shaping up phase. We're trying to shape up this idea before, and then we'll go to the community for feedback, and we'll ask everybody, and then we'll come back, synthesize, and then we'll deploy something. So we're definitely in like kind of step one. And I think the top ideas that I'm a fan of are redirecting a part of the yield created from Minipools, redirecting that towards creating liquidity. So it's like the AVAX staking yield goes directly towards creating liquidity. And then that can create, that creates a nice positive flywheel. Then the second one is being able to kind of like lend GGP tokens in exchange for AVAX, which then goes into, so let's say I'm a mini pool operator, I want to earn the yield, but I don't want exposure to GGP. Maybe I can just borrow GGP tokens from the treasury in exchange for like putting up a certain amount of liquidity, some certain amount of like AVAX liquidity, and then that also funds my mini pool.
Oh yeah.
I think both of those, these are the two that I'm exploring more deeply right now. I'm kind of a fan of the first one a little bit more, because then that also creates some good revenue drivers for the protocol treasury that then like that remains optionality. But yeah, what do you guys think?
But like really quickly, I think it's the second one is actually something that might be attractive for home validators, and the reason being is that as I understand, GoGoPool has also kind of a rewards cap, in the sense that you cannot, the rewards are based in GGP tokens, right? So I cannot come there with, I don't know, $1 million worth of GGP and then one validator and dry out the whole rewards, right? So you guys have something in place that, as I understand, that caps this on the amount of kind of number of amount of AVAX that you actually put up with as well. So this is a pretty cool idea, because that means that if I still have like earned some GoGoPool GGP tokens, I can, and I don't want to run another mini pool for reasons like, hey, my hardware doesn't allow, I'm running at home or whatever, like something like that, or I don't have 1,000 AVAX anymore, then I can just go and lend it out, get converted into liquidity for the protocol. So that might be a good idea. Yeah, I mean, have to think more about it, but yeah, makes sense.
Luis, what do you think as head of research?
I have to agree with Erwin on that one, but yeah, I wanted to maybe, in the interest of time, touch a bit more upon GoGo Pro, and since we touched a bit more on the financial barrier, maybe expand a bit more on the technical, and then maybe at the end, if we have time, on the community and governance side of things, which I think is also pretty interesting. But yeah, maybe you could give a brief overview of GoGo Pro and how are you helping and why are you building it, essentially?
Yeah, so GoGo Pro is kind of like a second freemium product that we rolled out, and that was specifically to foster more experimentation and with subnet technology, specifically the subnet EVM. So the experience for a developer right now to kind of like play with subnets, it's pretty decently hardcore. It's like I have this internal metric of we want subnets to get to the point where you can go to a hackathon, build a cool subnet, prove out the concept, and then win the prize afterwards. So that's like 24, maybe 36 hours of working, let's say like 4 hours to sleep. So that leaves you with like 6 hours to like design your thing and come up with the idea, maybe like 24 hours to actually build the thing, and then like 2 hours to set up the pitch and the commercialization of it. The experience with subnets right now is that those buckets are kind of flipped. You spend a lot more time just like reading about, okay, like let's set up my laptop, I'll get my coffee and then set up my laptop. Now, how do I get my RPC URL? Because I want to deploy my smart contracts. Okay, well, I've got to go through these like 5-10 steps. Oh, my Avalanche Go, there's a lot of dependency, like, hey, my Avalanche is, my Avalanche Go is out of date, or maybe my Go version, my Go package is out of date. It's like, it's pretty raw. But if all I want to do was go to Hackathon, click a button, and then get an RPC URL, so then I can like deploy my stuff onto it, customize the subnet. That's what GoGo Pro does. It's just a website. If anyone is familiar with Vercel or with Netlify, it feels a lot like that, where I just click a few buttons, select my VM. Right now, Subnet EVM is what's loaded up, customize it, create my token, kind of like do everything I need to just in a couple clicks. Choose a hardware provider, which of course one is on the list, but then other like a permissionless set of operators can host that VM. And then we're starting off with corresponding a couple more, but you kind of like select the configurations of the subnet, then you select which hardware you want to deploy it on, kind of what regions, and then it gets deployed. And then now you get your RPC URL, you get a faucet, you get wallets built in, and you get to see like real-time node log streaming, as well as the precompiles. You get to customize the subnet as well and like test out the precompiles really, really quickly. And then now all of a sudden, like to set up your basic subnet, it's taking you maybe like 20 minutes to like click through and like kind of understand the vocab words that are happening. And then I can spend the rest of your time playing with and kind of customizing the subnet.
Yeah. Just say like to plug in the shameless marketing, like we did do a nice demo during the second summit. Like
we did totally. Yeah.
The pool presentation was really cool, and we made a demo of this. Listeners can look it up. Yeah, and then like I think Luis asked about essentially the DAO, right? Like what is the governance? Like because we know GoGoPool has also a DAO. So what is the role there, and what do you see where it is now, and what's going to happen? I think would be a kind of a nice question.
Especially since there's like, from what I know, there's no really like a governance framework, let's say, in Avalanche. Like for example, in Cosmos, you have like a pretty standard model that people and chains use. Curious on your thoughts on what do you think is best when turning permissionless, in a sense, or elastic, as people call it in Avalanche. And yeah,
I think so. That's pretty interesting. So I guess I have two thoughts on that. One is instead of DAOs, like instead of every single piece of work and every single piece of funding having to go through this community vote, I think we've shown that that model doesn't super duper work in crypto. It's like you just can't operate fast enough. There are too many cooks in the kitchen. But what we're kind of turning our DAO is just a super powerful way to get customer feedback and listen to everyone, like all GGP token holders, like eventually when the DAO goes full on and to control the protocol or to control the settings of the protocol, then it's like, okay, these people have been with us since the beginning. They obviously understand the context. And I think the most important thing is to have a very strong mission for just every subnet or every chain, like having a very, very strong mission that I guess it starts with the founders, the founding team, but having a vision of like literally what you want to bring to life and then just coming up with one sentence to describe that. So for example, for our DAO, the mission is to help builders bring blockchain to the world by making subnets easy. So it's like every single thing that the DAO does and every single grant we approve, and if we ever make a as we like add liquidity and kind of like change and talk about like new updates to the protocol, like everything has to be extremely trackable and draw a direct line back to that mission statement of, okay, how does this help builders and developers bring blockchain to the world, and how does this make subnets easy? Not sure if I answered your question, Luis, but for us, like that's really, the DAO is extremely focused on letting all mini-pool operators and liquid stakers like really get involved in figuring out like, okay, we're all here and we've all been around in Avalanche since the beginning, like literally just to help builders like experiment with this stuff and then bring blockchain to the world. So now we just want to give a more mechanical way to help kind of facilitate that energy.
Got it. Yeah, I think completely makes sense. Would you consider, like, maybe to wrap up, like a juicy grant program?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's actually, it's actually in the works. I was thinking like, how much alpha is this if I really talk about it? But no, it's definitely in the works. Definitely in the works. The annoying part is that a lot of our team is based in the US. So it's just instantly, we need to like add more lawyers and like figure out like, okay, how do we do this without full gunning ourselves? But it's definitely in the works. It's going to happen.
Cool. I think like we are kind of finishing up, running over some time. Perhaps like final thoughts, like also like, where can we know more about GoGoPool? We mentioned the website already, but like, any final thoughts and hooks?
Yeah, go to our website, gogopool.com. At the very top right, there's going to be our Twitter and our Discord. Definitely join on Discord. I think there's some pretty lively discussions happening there, like almost all the time. And then follow me on Twitter, twitter.com or X, I guess, twitter.com/STVNGTS, Stephen Gates without the vowels. Follow me on Twitter. I frequently post. I try not to do it too frequently because I've got a job to do. But I frequently post about kind of what I'm learning about subnets, especially as we talk to a bunch of subnets. Their stories are so incredible. So then I just try to like pass that along out to Twitter, and people seem to like that.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen, for joining. I think we'll be wrapping up the season 2, episode 2, and hopefully we'll have you back soon to talk about a bunch of other things that we didn't have time today.
Love it. Thanks for having me on, guys.